Right, President Putin's worrying thoughts about the current deadlock on the Korean Peninsula come as South Korea backtracks on claims that the North is preparing a fourth nuclear test later this week. A government minister in Seoul now says he was being inaccurate when talking about indications of activity at a North Korean test site. Pyongyang has meanwhile announced it's suspending all work at two countries' industrial zone and is going to evaluate its personnel from the area. Earlier, Washington delayed its long-planned missile test to avoid further escalation at the Korean Peninsula. Pyongyang has been toughening its rhetoric recently, threatening a preemptive nuclear strike on the U.S. and declaring a state of war with Seoul. The U.S. and South Korea responded by sending warships and aircraft to the area. Let's talk to Glenn Ford now, who's a former member of the European and expert on Asia. Now, these harsh rhetoric that we've been hearing about, we've heard Seoul say North Korea is planning another nuclear test, then backtracks. Does Pyongyang pose a serious threat? Is it valid?
Well, I mean, there clearly is a potential threat of conflict on the peninsula. We've seen a number of incidents over the last few years where there have been clashes, particularly around the northern limit line at sea between north and south. And in the current climate, another clash like that could very easily escalate. I don't think either side actually intends to start a military conflict. The danger is that these things can happen by accident.
So what is Pyongyang trying to achieve with this war rhetoric aimed against a country clearly superior in terms of in military might?
Well, yeah, I mean, what we've got ourselves into is a dangerous escalation on both sides. I mean, it started with Kim Jong-un actually being involved in a satellite launch back in December. Then we had the nuclear test in February, just before Park Geun-hye, the new South Korean president, took office. We have a situation now where she certainly doesn't want to be seen as weak. The same's true of Kim Jong-un, and so we're getting this sort of escalation upwards, and neither side seems capable of actually looking at how they might de-escalate from where we are now, which puts us in a dangerous position. Not because, as I said, I think either side intends to use military action, but these things can very easily happen by accident.
Let's talk about the U.S. a little bit here in terms of their role around that area. They have been boosting their military presence around the Korean Peninsula. Why all of a sudden delay a ballistic missile test in order to avoid escalation, like they say?
Well, I mean, frankly, I'm not very convinced. We actually have a situation where they're deploying more troops, they're deploying warships. They've announced that they're going to deploy theater missile defense in Guam, which is a U.S. colony that's comparatively close to the Korean Peninsula. So there's 3 steps one way and 1 step backwards. So I think it's difficult to convince Pyongyang that this is much of a concession.
Okay, Mr. Ford, let's take a look at the situation. Harsh rhetoric, war talk, all of this. What would it take for two sides to sit down and actually have a talk?
Well, I mean, I think the whole issue is that the North Koreans generally see the U.S. as being key. The North Koreans have always been asking for bilateral talks between the United States and Pyongyang, Washington and Pyongyang, rather than Seoul, because they see, if you want, Washington actually calling the shots in ultimately.
We've heard the U.S. saying to their diplomats around the Korean Peninsula, saying we cannot guarantee your safety. Things are escalating. There's a lot of talk about war. How much worse do you see things getting before they actually get better? And will the international community actually...
Yeah, I'm not sure it can get a lot worse. So we've just heard that they're actually going to suspend work in the Kaesong industrial complex, which employs about 53,000 North Koreans in a joint venture with the South. That has never been suspended before. They've had trouble. So we've got to a situation we've probably not seen in terms of the dangers for several decades at least. So I don't think it can get much worse. It needs to start getting better as soon as possible.
Ex-European MP and Asia expert, Mr. Glenn Ford, thank you very much for your insight into the subject.
Okay, thank you.